Well, welcome everyone. Soraim Tovim, good afternoon. It's good to see so many people on today, and we're so proud and happy to be able to host Jonathan Ornstein live from Krakow for this very important conversation. I want to start by thanking first Brad Schwartz for helping put this together, and also our partners at the JCRC and the Krakow JCC, who've also helped put this program together and to help bring Jonathan to our community. As we were talking about this program and I've been reading the news and preparing, I couldn't help but think about our Torah portion this week, which is Parshat Shmini from the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. And the very beginning of the Torah portion begins with the inauguration of the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary the Israelites used in the desert. And it's a beautiful moment that brings God's presence in the midst of the Israelite camp. But right after that, we have the sudden and tragic deaths of Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu. And Aaron's response, the Torah tells us, is stunned silence. The world as he knew it was suddenly turned upside down. And while we know that there have been plenty of challenges in the world before Russia's unprovoked attack on Ukraine, many of us, I think, have felt similarly to Aaron at this moment. The news seems like headlines in history at the same time. Kyiv, Russia, Poland, the Jewish Agency. We can wonder if it's 2022 or the 1930s. And we know that stunned silence is insufficient. We want to do something to help. And many of us, if not all of us, have done that. We have given tzedakah to the Jewish Federation's Fund for Ukraine and other organizations like Hayas and Masorti and the JDC and others that are helping. I'm also happy to announce that I just learned that Jen Weiss, the CEO of our federation, and Harry Platt, our federation president, will be participating in a Jewish Federation of North America program where they'll be going to Poland to help on the border. And it's requested that they bring duffel bags full of over-the-counter medications and are asking the community to help collect those items next week. More information on that is going to come very soon, so watch out for those details. Today, we will learn about another important way that we can respond to the crisis in Ukraine. We're honored and grateful to have with us Jonathan Ornstein, Executive Director of the Krakow JCC, a position he has held since its opening in 2008. And many from our community have visited the Krakow JCC and seen Jonathan's wonderful work firsthand. We've also hosted Jonathan at TBS and in other places in our community, and that JCC has over 750 Jewish members and welcomes 10,000 visitors a month. And now it has become a center helping thousands of Ukrainian refugees, Jews and non-Jews, fleeing the Russian attack. And Jonathan and his team are doing tremendous holy work, and we are so proud and grateful to have you here, Jonathan, to talk to us about what you're seeing on the ground, what you've seen in Ukraine, and how we can help. What you're doing is truly a Kiddush Hashem, a sanctification of God's name, and we are also here to help any way that we can. And I also, on behalf of everyone here, want to wish you a mazel tov on the recent birth of your daughter, Ayala, that I just learned about. So mazel tov to you and Kasia on your new baby in the midst of all of this happening too. In terms of the format today, Jonathan is going to start by giving us an update and report from what he sees on the ground in Krakow and what's happening in Ukraine. After that, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions through the chat. When you write in the chat, it'll come to the moderators, and we will do our best to pose those questions to Jonathan. I'll apologize in advance, as I'm sure we will not be able to get to all of the questions, but we'll do the best that we can. Also, during the course of Jonathan's talk, I'm going to post a link in the chat for everyone to see where you can donate directly to the Krakow JCC and the work that it's doing. We hope that everyone will help support Jonathan's work. So Jonathan, we are grateful for you being here today, and it's my honor to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. It's a real honor for me to be with you. I was just telling the Rabbi before we came on that, lately over the past years, I've been traveling all over the world. I spend 4 or 5 months a year in pre-COVID world, speaking, traveling, different communities, mostly around the US. And the first trip that I took to meet a community and spend Shabbat with a community was in 2014 with you at TBS, which was a wonderful time. And I I really feel always a sentiment whenever I'm still in touch with a lot of people from your community and some on the call, and it always makes me think of, oh, how innocent and naive. I was so excited to do, for this one trip, and I didn't realize that my life would then become spent a lot of the time on airplanes. So it's nice to be reconnected in this way. Our JCC is a tiny little JCC, and I've been to your wonderful Cats JCC. Our whole JCC would fit in your gym, but strangely, we found ourselves or built ourselves up, and we are the largest Jewish organization in Poland. Most of the Jewish organizations in Poland are focused in Warsaw. When this war broke out, which was very surprising, although maybe we shouldn't have been that surprised, all of us, if you think that a belligerent Russia led by dictatorial Putin, who'd already really taken two pieces of Ukraine over the last year, 7 or 8 years, had forces massed around at the border, but still it surprised us, which I don't quite get. But we woke up 4 weeks ago today, very surprised by what was going on. We are about 150 miles from the border in Krakow, I think the largest big city in Poland, the closest big city in Poland, relatively big city in Poland, to the border. We straight away came into work, and a few things were clear to us. One was that we were going to do everything we can to help Ukrainians, and we had no idea what that meant at the point. We have zero experience, as you would assume, in any humanitarian relief. We're a JCC, a little bit more than a JCC, probably kind of like a JCC, JCRC, synagogue, and federation a little bit, where almost everything going on in our community is going on through us, whether that's Hillel, BBYO, Shabbat dinners, direct care for survivors, rabbis, Orthodox and Reform having classes, but certainly not a humanitarian organization, which is what we've become. So straight away, we said we were going to do all we could for Ukrainian refugees, and we were going to help everybody without question. It didn't matter to us, Jews or non-Jews. We were going to help Ukrainians. So straight away, the first thing we did was put a big banner on the front of our building in Ukrainian saying welcome. And people started to drop food off here, supplies, hygienic supplies, medicine, toys, clothing, as the refugees started to pour across the border. At this point, 4 weeks in, our center is fully transformed into a humanitarian relief center. We are open 7 days a week, 14 hours a day. We have 300 to 500 Ukrainians a day are coming in to food, medicine, diapers, whatever they need. We started serving meals to them so they can eat right away when they're here. 200 meals a day we're serving in the building for these people coming in. We are also, the most pressing need, the most important need is housing. These people very often have nowhere to live. There are 130, 140,000 refugees in Krakow. The city of Krakow itself, the government is housing 8,000 of them. So about 6% being taken care of by the government, and the rest are fending for themselves. We are currently housing 220 Ukrainians in hotel rooms and apartments that we seek. We've hired somebody full-time, actually 2 people, to just search for hotel rooms to try to build capacity to be able to house these people. We're also feeding them and providing them with services. It's not enough to just take somebody who's come across the border, stick them in a hotel and pay for them to be there is nice and important, but how do you know they're okay? We have children with special needs that are there, and we're providing them with all the services that we can and that they need, including cash, so they have money to live on. We've opened a mother and child safe space around the corner from the JCC. We have 25 children in the daycare there. Their mothers are right next door, learning Polish, learning English, getting job training, psychological counseling if they need it. We've partnered with 4 local NGOs to open a central refugee hub right near the train station, we have about 20 local Ukrainians in there all the time that are providing support and advice to these people who come in. We're also housing 100 people there in cots. We've established a presence in the last few days at the train station. I just got a call today. They need 50 beds. We just paid for 50 beds at the train station, working with the local scouts. We're also working on the border. Really, the way this looks is that you have refugees in the cities, you have what's going on the border itself, and then you have work inside Ukraine. And I'll touch on all three of those areas. So we are working with an organization, actually an evangelical Christian organization that's been involved in Ukraine for years, supporting Jews in Ukraine for years, actually. So it has a very good network inside Ukraine. We've been working with them to set up tents on the Ukrainian side of the border. There's a large amount of capacity on the Polish side of the border. Everybody goes to the border and people take photos. There's dozens and dozens of tents on the Polish side of the border, and not a tremendous amount of people coming across at that or stopping there. Very often they're bussed through the border to refugee centers right inside the border in towns. So you really have, we saw that the need, what wasn't being served was the Ukrainian side of the border. As you would imagine, it's much easier to operate on the Polish side of the border. So we partnered with this organization. We purchased tents and set up tents on the Ukrainian side at one of the border crossings, helped them staff with medical staff, and there are volunteers there and providing supplies. So if you come over, you need something warm to eat, a bowl of soup, some food, candy for the kids, so a doctor to look at you, we're providing that on the Ukrainian side. Also, we're sending supplies in with this organization and bringing people out. The other day, we helped them source buses and supplies. We sent in 29 buses full of supplies into Lviv, which is the closest Ukrainian big city near the Polish border. And then the buses emptied out everything they had, and they went to the train station one by one to pick up people. And here we're talking about, I'm sure you're aware of it, we're talking about women and children. Men between 18 and 60 are not allowed out of the country, which is also part of the aspect that we're dealing here with psychological services. These are people who left their husbands, fathers, brothers, sons, partners in the country. So it also brings up its own issues in terms of a vulnerable population. So they brought these 29 buses and filled them with women and children at the train station, and brought 1,000 Ukrainians out of the country. And we've helped 3,000, maybe 4,000 Ukrainians cross through the border that way. We're also working with other organizations. We're getting all these supplies that are coming in. There was a group from northern New Jersey that came from Temple Emmanuel and Gloucester with Rabbi Kirshner. They collected 600 duffel bags worth of supplies. They were only able to fly with 100, only 100. It was 10 people in the mission. They brought 100 duffel bags. We've already sent them. Most of that has already gone into Ukraine, into 3 different cities in Ukraine. We're receiving supplies and sending to other points in Krakow, to the border, and then deep into Ukraine. I've been to the border many times. The other day, we went across the border. We went to a hospital about 20 miles into Ukraine. There was a military base, if you remember in the news, on March 13th, that was bombed by Russia. It was the closest that anything had happened to the Polish border. There's a hospital next to that military base in Yavoriv. We went to that hospital and we dropped off specialized bandages that were that we had purchased in Poland because this hospital had used all their supplies when they were taking care of the soldiers and others that were bombed by this missile attack in Ukraine. We're helping people. Sometimes people come to us. We get a call that people are need to get somewhere else. Somebody says, comes in or calls us, or somebody lets us know through one of our partner organizations that they have a cousin in Paris that they can go to, but they have no way to get there and no access to their money. So we're buying train tickets, plane tickets, sending people to Israel, sending people wherever they need to go. We got a call the other day that there was a bus coming with 45 children with autism, that there was an organization that was going to host them in Vienna, and they had no way to get there. So we hired 2 buses, sent them to the border, and got those children with autism safely to Vienna. I got a call. I got a call last night, a text from someone I know who used to live in Ukraine, actually a diplomat, that was involved with an orphanage in the town of Uman, which is interesting because for Jews, Uman is a pilgrimage pride. This is where Rabbi Nachman of Breslov is buried, and a lot of ultra-Orthodox Jews go there every year for Rosh Hashanah. But anyway, lets me know last night that there was an orphanage. 51 children are in one room with no heat in the basement of this building, in harm's way. And can we help with? They can get them out of Ukraine. They have a woman, because they have these diplomatic connections, has an extraction, what she called an extraction team that's going to get them out of Ukraine. And can we help with housing? And we found this sort of large housing, like it was a hotel that wasn't really being fully used, that we've already this morning found space. And in the next few days, hopefully we will be 51 orphans under the age of 10, and 6 caregivers will come to Krakow, and we will house them. A guy came into my office yesterday, older gentleman, who just left, and said that he told us that he was the head of the community, of the small communities in 2 regions of Ukraine. I think it was Kharkiv and the Kiev regions, so very far away from the border. And he was responsible for all the Jews there. And he pulled out a piece of paper with a meticulously handwritten information on these like 2 sides of a piece of paper, which was all the contact information and addresses for 280 elderly Jews that were there, that couldn't leave, were unable to leave, and can we help provide them with food? Of course, and we're already purchasing a car for the people to be able to go in, and then that will be dedicated to helping the people that will be on the other side of the border can bring this car to them. And we'll also be sending money to the volunteers who are then going to the markets. You can't go into the stores have no food, but the markets, the sort of farmers markets, you can still purchase things. So we're working to do that. I know it's a lot to process, and I'm just throwing a lot of information at you, but we've been very, very busy. I think, a little bit of geography here is important. I mentioned that we're 150 miles from the Ukrainian border. We're about 40 miles from Auschwitz. Our community that we're trying to rebuild was decimated by the Holocaust and then driven underground during communism. Our community and the Jewish people suffered so greatly in the Holocaust because others stood by silently. And I at first thought this was our responsibility to help these people and help people that aren't Jewish. A lot of organizations are primarily focused on Jews. And of course, we're the Jewish people. We need to look out for each other. But the Jews are in better shape here. The Jews need less help. The Jews have a network. The Jews are better taken care of for the most part. I mentioned those 280 Jews, and we'll help them, of course. But the real need here, the greater need as I see it on the ground, is for the non-Jews. And because so many stood silent when we had the war here 80 years ago, and which became the Holocaust, I thought it was our responsibility to do something. And while it might be our responsibility, I now see what we're doing here, and I think this applies to the Jewish people and really to all who can help. This is a privilege. We're remarkably privileged to be in a position that we're able to help. I wake up every morning, and my job was pretty rewarding, rebuilding Jewish life and setting up the first Jewish preschool in Krakow since the Holocaust, which opened since your visit, and a lot of good things. 50 Holocaust survivors in our building every day that we're taking care of. But the ability to help others, to help non-Jews, especially in this very region where our people suffered so greatly, is a tremendous privilege, and we're incredibly thankful that people around the world are helping us do what we're doing.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. So this seems like a good place to pause. And if anyone has any questions for Jonathan, I ask you to please write them in the chat, and we'll have a chance to ask him those questions and talk a little bit more. Jonathan, let me start off by just asking, in terms of the staff you have to help them, you have staff, you have volunteers. How do you feel like your constituency, your members, are dealing with this? Is there a lot of kind of, I don't know if there's as much time there is kind of for mental health pieces here too, but this must be pretty traumatic to see this at their border.
Absolutely. So we brought in psychologists to speak to our team, both as a team and individually. It's been difficult. Our community stands fully behind Ukraine. The Polish people stand fully behind Ukraine. I'm very critical of the government. I'm critical of a lot of things about Poland, but the Polish people has really been remarkable with this. We have a community member who is a single mom who doesn't have a huge house. Maybe it's a 3-bedroom house, and has 20 Ukrainians living there, and not her cousins and second cousins, strangers. She's a doctor, and she was at the hospital, and she was treating a family, a boy, and he was there with his mother and the sister. And she, after she treats them, which is also doing God's work, she said, asked where they're going, and they said they were going to the train station, and she said, no, you're not, and put them in her car and took them home after her shift. 20 people living in our house. So everybody's really doing what they can. And it's been a challenge for our staff. Normally, we're about 30 full-time employees here. We've hired 11 people full-time since this happened in the last few weeks, including 4 Ukrainian refugees that are translating for us, that are going and checking, calling all the people in the hotels to making sure they're okay. And yeah, the world is a nice place. It's nice to think of things that you do what you would like to do, but there are certain times in history and in your life where you do what's needed, and this is one of those times.
Great. So I see one question here about other organizations you're working with. Chabad, other Jewish organizations, partnerships. Who are some of your partners there, and what you're doing?
We're working with a lot of local organizations here, Polish organizations here. We do work with Chabad. They're a very small presence here in Krakow. We're working with other, international Jewish organizations, the JDC, Hayes, Jaffe. We work closely with UJA in New York. But on the ground, we're doing a lot. As I said, we're the largest Jewish organization here. These Jewish organizations don't have much of a presence. They might have brought people in, but in terms of what's happening here on the ground in our city, we're the Jewish presence here. We're the Jewish response here on the ground. So we have many partners, wonderful partners. AmeriCares, Israel, Natan. I can go through a lot, but here on the ground, we're doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, and trying to find support for us to do it. We're spending over $10,000 a day on housing, and that number is just is going up.
Yeah, I'm sure. So we have a couple of questions about kind of ways to help. So there's the link for the tzedakah that obviously is in our chat. I'm going to post that again to help support what you do financially. There are a couple of questions. One, if there are organizations looking for volunteers to come and help on either side of the border, and also questions about, in addition or beyond financial contributions, any other supplies or materials that you would need or we could ship from the U.S.
Sure. So about volunteers, we're overrun with volunteers. I'm getting 25 emails a day from people that want to come and volunteer. Which is wonderful. And we have 70 volunteers normally in our tiny little JCC. So volunteering is a big part of what we do. I lived for 7 years on a kibbutz. I'm all about the volunteering, but we don't have the capacity, nor there's no real need for volunteers right now in Poland at this point. If you're coming, there is a need. If you're a Russian or Ukrainian speaker, yes. If you have emergency services expertise, right? If you, I don't necessarily mean a doctor, if you're logistics and those things, or if you are able to come here, witness what you're going to witness, and then go home and you have a network of people that you can then get involved. And if you're, rabbis that come and then spread the word, or you have, your federation or something that you can then, by having experienced this firsthand, help get people engaged. But at the end of the day, you're coming here. The city of 750,000. Krakow has 140,000 refugees, and that number, maybe it's even higher. We need the resources here to be able to take care of refugees. You want to do something nice, go book yourself a nice room in the Sheraton for 2 weeks, and then don't come and let someone else who's homeless stay in that room. That would be a nice way to do it. So at this point, people say, oh, besides money, a lot of it, there are certain things that have been difficult to find, but not too many. If people want to give supplies, I just 10 seconds before the call, I just found out that we were able to source a warehouse. So we're going to go and rent a warehouse to be able to deal with the supplies. So that might change. But as of now, what our primary need, as I can say, is that we have to continue to pay for the housing for these people. But supplies maybe will be more necessary soon. What I've started to understand, it's interesting from a psychological point of view, that people feel the need to, like, people react differently. Like, even if somebody's writing a check and it can be, for whatever amount, there's a need to give things. I think people have this idea that they're by, envisioning, if you buy, Tylenol and you give that to somebody, or you hand it, or you send it in a package, you can envision that person, somebody using it in something. So people have this need to give. So there are things that are needed or will be needed. At this point, though, to be honest, the real need is the financial support to be able to take care of these people.
Great. We did have a couple chats here asking which Sheraton and which hotels are close to the JCC. If people did want to take you up on booking a room and letting people stay.
The Sheraton's expensive. I was saying that there are other places closer by, but in other words, you're talking about some. We have rooms. I was joking a little bit in that sense. Don't do that. But there was something very cool that people were doing, which is on Airbnb. People were renting Airbnb rooms from people in Airbnb in Ukraine, and then not going, of course, obviously, and then they would get the money. So then you can help people. It's not so easy to help people directly in Ukraine, right? Which is really, they need help in Ukraine. Sometimes money isn't the thing. If there's nothing to buy in a store, then money isn't the thing that they need. But luckily, we're able to get supplies in. Somebody contacted me from North Carolina that they went to Dollar Tree corporate and got Dollar Tree corporate. I don't know how many stores there are. I think it's a lot to do that. But I mean, if people want to send things as well, we can, it can help circulate a list, as you're saying, as the rabbi was saying, sanitary items, Tylenol, cough medicine, a lot of those type of things, pajamas, slippers, toys, people doing dog toys, people are coming with their pets. So there are things that are needed, but most of those things can be more easily sourced here. So you're paying for shipping, which is often not the most efficient way of doing things. But
right. And I also want to point out, and thank you to David Snyder for passing on the information. I mentioned at the beginning of the call that Jen Weiss and Harry Platt are going to be part of a JFNA mission to Poland in a week or two. And they're going to be bringing a lot of over-the-counter medications that'll be collected in the Federation lobby and also at synagogues in the community. And David sent me over a list of different over-the-counter medicines that they're going to be looking for. I just put that in the chat, and more information will be about that soon. So we're looking forward to them being our shlichim, our emissaries, to go there and help with some of these pieces too. We're also getting a couple of questions, Jonathan, about kind of longer term questions, right? In thinking about, these refugees, of course, it's important and essential to help them in the short term, but what about the longer term? Do you think that they'll be going back to Ukraine? Will be staying in Poland itself? Are there any sort of insights you have at this moment? I imagine that's hard to do, but are any thoughts about that, about the longer term impact of this?
Absolutely. So what's an interesting fact is that before the war started, you had 1.5 million Ukrainians living in Poland. Like, we were always like, oh, so many Ukrainians, how interesting. And you start to have, a country of 38 million. So about 9, maybe 1/9 the size of the United States, with 1.5 million Ukrainians that have come in the last 7 or 8 years. So I guess if I do the quick math in my head, it would be like 13.5 million people in the last few years coming to the United States. So there was a massive amount of Ukrainians here before. So if Ukrainians are coming and staying in Poland when there isn't a war and their country being bombarded by Russia for 4 weeks with no sign of things stopping and only getting worse, then logic would tell us that probably a lot of them will stay when war ends, because the country is going to be in a very, very difficult situation, even with the billions and billions of dollars of aid that will be necessary and that I'm sure the world will give. The economy it'll be a very difficult situation. So we are a Jewish community center. At this point, we are something far greater than that, which is a center for people in need. I think that we will probably, to a certain degree, be helping Ukrainian refugees, Jewish and non-Jewish, for a while. I think hopefully over the next few months, that will be less of an acute need. We won't be putting people, there's not a long-term plan of keeping people in hotels. It's just, if we don't put them in hotels, women and children are sleeping on the floor of the train station at best. So what we're thinking at is that eventually we will transition back into a JCC. Our preschool is still running. We're still taking care of survivors. We're still doing Shabbat dinners. But the other, another aspect of this is how this will affect our Jewish community, right? Before the war started, 20%, 25% of our Hillel, of our young people, were Ukrainian. So the community was starting to become more and more Ukrainian before this happened. So we are a big question on our minds, as much as we're able to think beyond, oh my God, there are 50 orphans coming, what do we do? As much as we can give thought to a medium and long-term planning, then we are thinking, oh, how will this transform our community? Hiring Ukrainian-speaking staff, how to help integrate them into the community, what job skills they'll need so they can, the language skills, job skills, to help them become part of the Jewish community. I think that, our strength as a people, the Jews have it easier here because of all the times we've been, forced to move in our history. We're far more mobile than the average non-Jew is. There could be people that are sitting here in Krakow now that their families for 800 years were in the same little village, and there was no. We're generally a little different than that, in the sense that we're, nobody on this call 200 years ago's family was where you're sitting right now. So the mobility is built in, and we're more able to deal with these things. So that'll be interesting for us to see how to integrate these Ukrainians that will definitely stay in the community. The Sachnut's doing all they can to get people to go to Israel, but let's remember, these are Ukrainians that for the last 32 years could have gone to Israel. These aren't people that were in any real hurry to go to Israel, because they had every opportunity to do it for 32 years, right? So, the Jewish Agency exists and they're doing great work, but to get people to move to Israel, and they're doing that, but these are not people necessarily. Israel is an incredibly expensive country. As any of you who visited in the last few years, Tel Aviv is the most expensive city in the world. So, we have to think, there are a lot more. In the last few years, 1.5 million Ukrainians, not all Jews obviously, have come to Poland, and a few thousand Ukrainians have gone to Israel. So we'll see how that plays out coming up, over the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think we covered all of our questions, and I imagine everyone's kind of feeling like I am, which one is just, first of all, extremely grateful for you and in awe of the work that you and your staff and volunteers are doing in Krakow and in Ukraine, and what you've been able to accomplish there in a few weeks, and the amount of people you've been able to help, from children to mothers to Holocaust survivors, Jews, non-Jews, all across the world. It really, kol hakavod. I mean, it's really, really incredible, and we're very proud in how you are, representing us over there. I know I also speak for everyone here when I say that, we're committed to doing what we can to help support you. I posted again in the chat the link for financial contributions to give tzedakah. I hope everyone on will give some tzedakah to help support Jonathan, the Krakow JCC, and everything they're doing there as well. We look forward to hearing more from the Federation, from Jen Weiss and Harry Platt's trip to Poland that'll be coming up in a couple of weeks, and things we can donate to help with that too, and to find other ways to support us. We'll continue as a community to try to help support you and to help address this terrible situation that we see unfolding right there. But we're also gratified that we're able to do this in partnering together with the JCRC, with the Cats JCC, with so many in our community coming together to try and to make a difference and do the little bit we can to help in such a difficult situation. So I want to thank you again, Jonathan, for being with us. For all those who are here, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your donations to Tzedakah as well. If you have friends who weren't able to make it, this was recorded. We will be posting it, and we'll be getting that information out if we have a chance to process the video. And to David, to Sabrina, to Odette, to everyone who helped put this together, we really appreciate that too, and to Brad Schwartz for your help too in coordinating this and making this happen. We are very much appreciative. So want to say Toda Rabah, thank you everybody, and we hope that very soon this war can come to a close and rebuilding can begin. But in the meantime, we'll continue to do what we can to help support those in need. So Toda Rabah, thank you everyone. Thank you very much, Jonathan, and good luck. We're with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for caring.
Thank you.
Be well.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.